Welcome to the Matt Report, the #1 WordPress business podcast. This isn't geek speak. It's about the journey of success and failure as a WordPress entrepreneur. Get ready. You're just an episode away from your next aha experience or big idea. And now your host, Matt.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Matt Report. I got a tremendous episode for you today. I'm sitting down with Ethan Marcotte. He's a web designer, developer, speaker, author, most notably about responsive web design, right? And he's not your typical WordPress guy or gal. He is somebody who is just, freelance web designer and looking more about it from the responsive technologies, the mobile platform, that kind of thing. And we're going to sit down and chat today about, sort of his experience in that realm, dealing with some of these clients who are, really looking to invest in these technologies, not just, your typical pizza shop who's looking to get a mobile site, but folks who really need to invest in user interface. And I think you're gonna learn a lot from this. He's definitely got some great insights, and we're also going to talk about marketing yourself, right? And sort of how he got to that stage by speaking, by writing, by blogging, by author, being a guest author on a book apart and a list apart, and getting connected with those folks. So we're going to chat about that. He's also going to stick around for those Matt Report Pro members and give us some of his insight to charging a few more bucks, finding more clients, and all that good stuff. As always, appreciate all the 5-star reviews that I'm getting on iTunes. If you're really finding this useful, please, I'd love it for you to go ahead and give that a good rating, share it with your friends, that kind of thing. MattReport.com/subscribe, join the mailing list so you know when all this great stuff comes out. And MattReport.com/join. And you can learn more about the Pro membership that has launched and underway. And we're doing great things with the community and helping folks be a little bit better at their WordPress business or web design business in this case. So thanks for tuning in. And without further ado, let's talk to Ethan. Hey everybody, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Matt Report. Super excited to be joined today by Ethan Marcotte. Ethan, welcome to the program.
Matt, thanks for having me, man. It's great to be here.
So fellow Bostonian, fellow friend of WordPress, we were chatting before the show and trying to figure out how we introduce you. And, of course, I dropped the line like responsive web developer god or something to the effect. Right. But give folks the 2-minute elevator pitch, who you are, what you do.
Yeah, well, as soon as I figure it out, I'll definitely let you know. I'm an independent designer based in Cambridge, Mass, just outside of Boston, and I guess I'm probably best known for coining that term responsive design a couple years back in an article for List Apart, and then I wrote a book on the topic a little bit later for Book Apart, same title, and I do a healthy amount of consulting for people that are just trying to figure out their design strategy beyond the desktop. So trying to figure out what kind of multi-device design and business strategy they might need, how they could actually adopt responsive design internally, and what that means for them in their business. So,
Tremendous. So it sounds like it's quite the experience, quite the journey you've been on. A lot of the folks listening are either just starting out or they've been in it for a few years and they're like, hey, I need to get sort of to that next level. Now, You're writing books. You're mentioned with some of the big names in our industry. How did you get there? I mean, what was your jumping off point?
I really have no idea. I mean, it's I've been really incredibly lucky the last couple of years. It feels really weird. I just wrote this article on responsive design. I swear it's perpetually surprising and terrifying to me that people are so excited about it. It was an assignment, just write something down I'm kind of passionate about. I gave it a name, and then it just kind of resonated with folks on a level I wasn't really prepared for. But I've been more or less independent for the past 8 or 9 years with a couple studio gigs, kind of breaking that up here and there. But I've just been really fortunate to kind of have interesting problems come my way, and a lot of that's kind of informed the way I think about the web. So responsive design sort of grew out of some mobile specific projects, and just sort of trying to think if there's a way that we could be designing a little bit more flexibly. Like I said, that kind of resonated with a lot of folks. So I've had the opportunity to work with people like the Boston Globe back in 2010. People Magazine last year. So it's been a really great trip.
Yeah, I don't want to trivialize your accomplishments, but a lot of folks.
Go ahead.
A lot of the folks are looking at that. How does he do that? Right? How does he land a job or a gig with these magazines or these media outlets when they're still trying to like dig their way out of their mom's referral of a pet parlor down the street? How any advice to getting to that next level?
Yeah, I mean, in both of those, the Globe and People Magazine, I mean, they didn't, I was pulled onto those teams basically by, some local to the client friends and resources. So, my client on the Boston Globe website was a firm here in Boston called Filament Group. Mm-hmm. And People Magazine was run by the shop Global Moxie out of Brooklyn. So I think in both of those cases, it'd been kind of a direct result of my writing. The Boston Globe was basically, because Filament Group was so excited about responsive design from my articles. So, I was kind of fortunate there. But the one thing I tell a lot of people, and I kind of feel like even if you're at the beginning of a journey, just getting your start into this industry, I really feel like writing about that is incredibly critical. Like, even if you don't have like the next big thing or what have you, like I really feel like just blogging about like what you've learned about web design or web development or whatever, it's a really great way to sort of like build up a body of work to sort of like chart your evolution, but also connect with other people who might be having some of the same questions. So that's how it's played out for me. I mean, I've been fortunate in that I haven't had to do a lot of like actual marketing recently, but just having a place online where you can actually share some of your experiences is, I think it's one of those things that, at least for me, it doesn't seem like a lot of people talk about.
Yeah.
It's
a lot of the folks, a lot of the entrepreneurs that I'm interviewing, they're directly relating their success to just sort of either simply blogging about what it is that they're doing and the different things that they've encountered, all the way to either just doing it on like a holistic journal, or just, hey, I learned what CSS3 was today, and this is what it does. And they found their different avenues. I mean, one might find Boston Globe, one might find just another client that way, but it's still beneficial. Anything that folks should be. So a lot of folks that tune in say, yeah, I really want to blog. I don't know what to blog about. I mean, obviously you just answered that, but a lot of people have that fear of putting their words out there. I know I do. And folks say, it's funny because I was just reading an email from somebody that the other day. It was like, oh, you use gets instead of get in your blog post. And I was like, okay, great. Like, I don't, it doesn't bother me. Like, I know I'm not the best writer in the world, but I still do it. Any advice for folks like me that are listening?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things I continually struggle with. I mean, I've got, to be fair, I've got like this abysmal blogging record over the last year or so. I've been, pretty busy with other projects, and it's been hard to find the time for writing. But when I was writing more regularly, and even now that I'm sort of like warming back up again, there's always that sort of like voice inside that says somebody else must have covered this. Somebody else has already discussed this topic. They've covered everything possible that's out there. It's hard to kind of look past that. It's like our default position is imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just really important to say that for me, I've found that if I'm asking myself those questions, even if somebody else has talked about them, their chances are there are people that have missed that other more authoritative post. They probably got the same questions that I do. And I think that's been helpful for me pushing past. It's like, here's this thing that maybe somebody else has covered it already, but it was helpful to me, so I'm putting it out there in case it's helpful to somebody else. It's like you don't have to stake new ground all the time. It's really about like, sharing your experiences, whether or not they're completely new, I think is totally irrelevant. It's really just, here, if you had a question answered, publish it, get it out there, and try to help somebody else find it.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it safe to say that all this blogging stuff sort of compounds into the the book deals and at least the seed to create to write a book, and how important is it to write a book in this day and age to be a thought leader?
Well, I don't know if I'm anything remotely close to a thought leader. I mean, my Twitter account is basically GIFs all the time. So I think a lot of the good things that have come to me in my career come out of blogging, directly out of blogging. I mean, that could be client work, that could be speaking engagements, which led to more client work. But it's really about opening me up to other avenues where I can connect with other people, whether that's over email or what, and just, good things kind of come out of that, really. I mean, back when I was really furiously blogging, like right at the start of my career, it was a great way to sort of connect with other people who were writing about, this new CSS thing we were all kind of excited about. And that led to, being invited to speak at certain conferences or maybe collaborate on a fun project that then, helps get you better noticed. I mean, I got excited about web design when I found Jeffrey Zeldman's blog back in 2000, 2001, and he wasn't writing exclusively about CSS. He was writing about, like, the first thing I read from him was he was invited to speak at some conference in, I think it was Turkey. He never really traveled abroad extensively, and it was this beautiful essay. And then I find out this guy's really excited about, like, HTML and CSS on top of that, and it's like, I want to be able to write with that kind of passion about what I do. And I kind of feel like most of the best connections that I've had have really come out of that, like, meeting other people online, and most of that's come out of my writing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it is tremendous advice. There's so many ways to like do social networking. It's not just like Facebook, and it's certainly not just Twitter. It's like this. It's this collaborative effort of publishing your own content, be it an animated GIF or be it a 5,000 word blog post, that all kind of culminates together and finds people along the way, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Let's turn to the technology side, or actually, before we get to that, let's talk about sort of design, right? And sort of the folks listening, they're either out there, reselling WordPress services, be it other themes and plugins, or they're designers themselves, and they're designing your typical either brochureware site or marketing site for their clients. How important, in your point of view, and I think I already know the answer, is well-crafted design, and how much effort should people be putting into this stuff?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I don't really, I spoke at WordCamp, sharing the docket with you a couple of weeks ago now, and I've been sort of away from the WordPress community a little bit over the last couple of years. My first blog was, my first actual blog, I guess, was on WordPress, and that's kind of how I got my start writing online. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, like, so much of my work really comes out of, spending the time thinking about an interface and how it's going to, best serve the needs of either the content or the application or whatever functionality is kind of sitting beside it. So, in terms of, like, just thinking about it as some more like off the shelf thing, that's not something I have a ton of experience with. I will say that, I've found, like, third-party tools are incredibly helpful for my work. Like, CSS frameworks, for example, I'll use for, like, prototyping, like at ideas really quickly that are kind of disposable. But I think there's always going to be a need for, really carefully considered design, at the end of the day. I mean, I think the best products and services I use that have, any amount of care in their interface, I think are just valuable to me. I mean, even, Twitter, for example, I mean, they're designing on a scale that's, and Facebook, which I do not use, but I mean, these are services that are designing on a scale that I've never really had to experience before, and even if I don't agree with all their decisions, you can still see some thinking and process behind them, and I think for me that's a sign of a really beautiful interface, frankly.
Yeah.
So
you are, obviously well versed in sort of, talking about these things at this scale, user interface, user function, user experience, that kind of thing. Some of the folks listening are still trying to get, the local pizza shop to invest in a responsive design, right, for their website.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on how people can sort of help, pitch the idea of better interface, but at a very layman's way, if that's possible?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think that, at the end of the day, anything you can do to optimize for mobile, for example, is going to have some massive dividends paid off for your business. So whether it's a responsive site or something more device specific, I think that's a separate discussion. But I mean, for me, the most successful conversations I've had about responsive design didn't really necessarily touch on responsive design at all. It's just like, this is how we build websites now, or in my practice anyway. This is how I, think about designing for the web. So it's not really about building separately for every new device class that we're designing for, like mobile, tablet, and desktop. It's really like, all right, here's your website, and also it's just going to kind of work online.
Right.
So if there are budget constraints, or if you're having trouble sort of doing like an upsell on responsive design, there are probably some off-the-shelf frameworks that can probably make it more affordable for you and your clients to kind of design and implement. I mean, there are some great CSS frameworks out there. I mean, Twitter Bootstraps made some great inroads in making responsive pattern libraries a lot more accessible. Foundation by Zerb is a really great CSS framework, and I know WordPress has got some great responsive themes as well. So, if you're just thinking about the design process for your clients as this is just going to adapt from the outset, you can build that into your costs initially. Then, I don't think it necessarily needs to be a separate discussion. But on the other side of the equation too, I mean, like I said, when I'm doing design reviews with clients, more and more, it doesn't really involve like projecting the site up on a screen or just like emailing them comps. It's really about like, load this up on your phone, like actually showing them live code, even if it's just like a rough prototype of what this page is going to do. Like having the design in their hand on a small screen really is, I think, kind of powerful in a lot of ways. So that's been pretty effective for me.
Yeah. Are these conversations that you're having with sort of the bigger clients and talking about technology, are they more versed in this stuff? Are they more apt to say, okay, yeah, I get it, let's do it? Or is there some kickback as, the person who might not even know what, responsive is still trying to understand this stuff? Like when you're out there in those meetings, is it just as difficult?
Yeah. Well, I mean, sort of, not quite in that way. I mean, I think that, in most of the client conversations I've been fortunate enough to be in, they sort of understand that at least there's a benefit to a responsive approach for their business. I think that one of the threads I see pop up in a lot of not just discussions I'm in, but just kind of generally online is there's still a little bit of like old conceptual thinking that if I'm on a mobile device, I want to do less. That I can't do as much as if I'm sitting down at a desktop. So that we should be delivering less content, less functionality to mobile devices. And it's all, that's kind of challenging because, our audiences are becoming predominantly more mobile. That's, we're still seeing massive growth on these small handheld devices, especially from developing economies, which is something I'm kind of really interested in designing for right now. But, so it's really a matter of getting them in the mindset that we should start thinking mobile first from the outset, to go to Luke Wroblewski's phrase and just, start with that small screen and just use that to kind of like focus our interface and focus our content down to what's absolutely critical. But then we can sort of, if we're thinking responsibly, we can sort of scale up from there. We can basically slim down at first, streamline the approach, by using mobile as kind of like an acid test, and then use that to kind of build consensus and kind of improve the experience across the board for all devices that might be accessing the website. So
the on the mobile side of things and WordPress, when they combine, what do you think the biggest opportunity is for WordPress as a technology or as a platform? What's their biggest thing that they can be hitting upon in mobile right now to really push themselves through?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, my experience with WordPress over the last couple of years has been kind of slight, but I think there's some massive opportunities for lots of folks, especially WordPress, especially in like these developing markets that I mentioned before. I mean, we're seeing, like Southeast Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, like these are two dramatically like mobile only ecosystems, but they're seeing massive data usage, that basically there's some stats being thrown around right now that suggest that the developing markets are basically overtaking the mobile data traffic from the developed world, quote unquote, this year. So that basically like predominantly most of the internet is effectively like, moving further and further away from the West. So, that brings up a lot of really interesting questions about like, how can we ensure that our if 60% of the world's population is kind of estimated to be on sub 3G networks, like what can we be doing to make our designs and our interfaces more lightweight, more nimble, more sustainable, I guess. And that's kind of what I'm really interested in right now. Like we spent a lot of time designing these really beautiful interfaces that are incredibly riveting, but they're also a little bit heavy. And they might not be prepared for web that's getting a little bit cheaper, a little bit slower, but much more broadly accessed. So, how does that change the way we think about presenting information online, changing the way we think about aesthetics online? Anyway, that's my soapbox, but that's kind of what I'm excited about right now. And I think WordPress, given how broadly it's used globally, has a massive opportunity there.
Right. So you mean like let's not load every site up with like parallax.js. Let's do something a lot more lightweight.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so like responsive design initially was so focused on layout, but now we have like this other layer to think about, which is, how can we provide this compelling experience for all size screens, but, on networks of varying capabilities and speeds. I mean, bandwidth is a difficult thing to, really design for, but maybe we just need to do a better job about thinking about performance from the outset and just kind of lightening our footprint a little bit. So.
Short of the actual like design and UI, is there any technology in this open web that sort of helps with this, either bandwidth savings, some kind of like, any recommendations from your end on that side of it?
Two things, I mean, and I'm no performance expert in general, but I mean, two things that have been incredibly helpful for me in my work. One is this notion of setting a performance budget at the start of a project, so that, whether it's like saying the pages aren't going to exceed a certain file size or they're going to load in a certain number of seconds over a specific network type, like having that at the outset of a project rather than just when you start coding, it's a really great way to kind of focus the entire process. So, every time you think about adding a new feature, a new design element, like you're always kind of measuring that against that budget that you set at the outset. And if it's going to negatively impact the user experience, then it's worth having a discussion about how valuable it's going to be. Because there's all this data out there about how, page load times directly impact, bounce rates, conversion rates, if it doesn't, there's a saying floating around that if a page doesn't load in a second, it's effectively broken for your business. That's kind of extreme, but having a performance budget can really help with that. But the other thing that I think is most critical is this whole idea of like progressive enhancement, where we're sort of we're designing for all web-enabled devices, not just sort of the latest and greatest, and ensuring that regardless of the capabilities of the browser, they can still access our content, even though the experience may not be quite as advanced. And so this is what the BBC are doing, The Guardian. They're doing these massive responsive sites, but they're all basically like loading as little code as possible, just enough to sort of see if your browser is advanced enough, and then they sort of inject more into the page to give you that more robust experience. And that just basically helps you manage a ton of complexity in the marketplace. I mean, we're designing for so many devices right now, so thinking broadly in terms of just quality of the experience, like these different experience tiers, is really helpful. So
I'm going to get all conspiracy theorist on you.
Bring it.
I've got this crazy notion that, in X amount of years, we're not going to have the web sites that we see now. Most of it will be fed through just data, because we are going to be looking at this data. We're going to be looking at our browsers as we know them now, either through glasses, on our refrigerators, in our cars, on our watches. Like the screens and data will be everywhere. How can we... right now it's like, hey, it's fairly easy. It's like 27-inch iMac all the way down to a 4-inch iPhone, and let's make a UI that fits in that. Well, what happens when it's on your TV and your refrigerator and your watch? And now all Google cares about is your data that's on this website. Any crazy thoughts like that coming from you, or is it or is it just me?
No. I mean, the web has never been just about browsers anyway, right? I mean, it's not just HTML and CSS. It's the services and APIs behind our content. And I think there's a lot of really great work being done right now to kind of help us lay the foundation for that Internet of Things, that we're sort of planning for. Karen McGrane's book on mobile content strategies is a really great way of sort of thinking about your content, your information in this more sort of adaptive mindset. So, for many responsive sites, you might be thinking mostly about like, and I think you should be designing for like content and feature parity whenever possible. There might be instances where, hey, I'm going to be providing a feed just to that internet-enabled fridge that you're going to be buying soon, Matt. Thinking more about your content is divorced from your interface and divorced from, your HTML and CSS, and preparing it to live in more places, I think is pretty important. So yeah, I don't think the web's going to be going away anywhere anytime soon, but I think that it is, I think you're right, going to be accessed from more and more places and more contexts, and we need to be planning for that.
Okay, awesome. Let's spin it back real quick to publishing with WordPress, because there was one topic I wanted to talk about, and specifically with publishing on WordPress. You noted about, hey, the front end should be lightweight and bandwidth saving. Is the next step maybe to slim things down, like we're seeing with Ghost, if you're familiar with that, where the actual publishing part of it, the behind the scenes, the back end, is super lightweight as well, right? So these folks who are using small devices can publish.
Yeah, totally. I think that people look at me funny because I actually wrote most of my, or a large part of my book on my phone.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, not like the entire thing, but like I did a significant amount of editing and rewriting on my phone. And a lot of that is basically just like wanting to be offline or wanting to be able to, jot down a thought or revise a couple paragraphs when I'm sitting on a subway heading into Boston, and that always takes forever. So, I think that, editing, I think, definitely needs to move beyond the desktop, like a lot of our interfaces have been. But, I think that definitely encompasses like more lightweight designs, maybe more simplified interfaces, but at the same time, still giving them all the features and functionality that they expect to write. And some of that includes designing for offline as well, right? Like we still have this mindset, I think, just generally speaking, about that we're always going to have a persistent connection to the web. And putting aside like mobile versus desktop, the size of the screen doesn't really come into it. I think like there's plenty of opportunities for us to start thinking about, for planning for, that dropped connection, regardless of the size of the screen. So I think there are a lot of really exciting opportunities there.
What are you using for a phone? What's your tech choice?
I'm still I'm slumming it, quote unquote, on the iPhone 4S.
Slumming it.
Yeah, no, it's a great phone, and I'll probably upgrade at some point. But that's my main thing right now.
Any exciting? Are you going to get one of the new iPads, the iPad Airs, or anything like that?
Nah, no, I'm probably gonna wait a little bit. I've got an iPad Mini that my wife surprised me with last year, and it's like, this thing is, I don't know, it feels like the future to me. Like the Retinas look great, but I think at least right now, like it's the perfect size. I can do a lot of writing on it and reading, and it's probably my favorite computing device right now.
Very nice. What are these? And to sort of wrap up the more formal interview, what are these bigger outfits looking at as far as investing in mobile technology today? Is it still responsive? Is there opportunity somewhere else that sort of the folks on the ground haven't seen yet, that sort of the bigger organizations are moving into?
Like I said, most of the conversations I've been part of, like there's still a lot of excitement around responsive design. But the one thing that kind of recurs, again, both in client meetings but also online, is that you sort of have to make a trade-off between responsive design and like maybe a more customized execution for like a specific kind of device, or you have to choose between responsive design and native applications or something like that. And that to me has always felt like a weird false choice. Like you can definitely have both. Like one doesn't necessarily exclude the other, any more than like having a mobile site back in the day would exclude you from having a really great native application. If there's a benefit to your audience and to your business to have a compelling experience just for one specific context, that's great. But for me and for a lot of my clients, it's really about like designing for that broad cross-device access first, and then look for really interesting areas where you can sort of like deliver a compelling experience to a specific segment of your market.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that like a native HTML5 app is going to have a different use case, or I shouldn't say native, I should say HTML5 app over a native like iOS app? Are you, when folks are talking to you about that, are you saying, well, it's two different use cases? Like we'll make an HTML5 app experience for you, because it's faster, leaner, more affordable, that kind of thing?
Well, yeah, it doesn't always come down to questions of cost. I mean, some of it's around, features and functionality. I mean, so, we're starting to get more tools in the browser that allow us to access certain things than the, native to a device, like, device, accessing the camera, for example, GPS. Hopefully soon we're going to get better access to network information, in the next couple of years, so we understand how much bandwidth is available. But at least right now, there's a lot of functionality that's really only kind of accessible if it's a native on the device application. So it's really kind of figuring out what they hope to achieve with the application, and then sort of pick the best tool to execute on that strategy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's gonna be a wrap of the more formal interview. Tons of great knowledge being dropped for the designers and young entrepreneurs out there. And I'll jump into the last two segments here. What's in your toolbox? What special app or a secret piece of hardware do you use on a daily basis to get you through the day? Is something like an Evernote, but maybe something that's not as known to the world.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, other than like the design tools I use on a daily basis, I think one of the things I use most. Two things that I use most are two editors. One is this web app called Editorially that I do some light advising for. But I mean, it's a markdown driven editor that can publish out to a bunch of different areas. But it's a really great way to kind of like do long form writing, but also collaborate with other people. So that's really critical for me. And then I've been an old school simple note user for ages, and that's invaluable to me. And the main reason I use that still instead of Editorially is just like it's great for offline writing. So I think once they sort of beef up their offline capabilities, I'll probably drop it. But at least right now, those two things are critical for me.
Let's jump into the lightning round. I'll ask you a series of quick questions, and you will have a series of quick answers.
All right.
If you're ready. The number one WordPress plugin that you cannot live without.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to pass. Sorry, I seriously haven't touched WordPress in years. I'm a bad person.
Real quick, which platform are you publishing on?
I'm currently on Expression Engine, but I think I'm going to be moving on to something like Jekyll pretty soon, just for like flat file, no database publishing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite business book?
My favorite business book? Well, frankly, I think, I don't think I've read too many business books. I mean, one of the most important like design books I've read is probably How Buildings Learn by Stuart Brand, which has nothing to do with web design, but it's all about web design sort of indirectly. So it's a great book. I can't recommend it enough to people.
Nice. What's a quote that you live or run your business by?
Jeffrey Zeldman once said that most of the success he had in business was basically showing up on time and being nice to people. And I like those two things have been incredibly true for me. So nice. I don't know where he got it, but it's great for me.
Nice. What's the best business or career advice you ever received?
Same answer.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's the longest a client project has ever taken?
The longest client project, 10 months.
Not bad.
Yeah.
I think 5 years is the running
wow.
leader.
Wow. Yeah.
If you had to switch to another CMS, what would it be? I think you already answered that. Jekyll, and is there any other
Jekyll,
one?
but WordPress is also looking fine. Seriously. I've been seeing some really great stuff come out of the community. It's pretty cool.
Nice. Is there one thing, while I have you on the hot seat, is there one thing that, hey, if they just did it, you would jump to it?
Oh, WordPress? No,
yeah.
I think it's. I moved on to Expression Engine just because of like, I liked a lot of the features around, a lot more functionality around like templating and really kind of customizing the design a bit more. So I mean, like I said, I've just been more or less on the sidelines, sort of watching WordPress kind of get more and more into responsive, and a lot of the stuff I've been seeing is actually fantastic. So. Nice. I don't really shop around for CMSs too frequently, so
nice.
I'll have to check it out.
What's the one question I didn't ask you that I should have?
What's your favorite GIF?
Which one is it?
Oh man. I run this site called Bukkit, BUKKIT.IT, and It's basically just a repository of stupid images. One of the favorite ones in there is called Caked, CAKED.gif, and it's this massive 7 meg thing. And it just, every time I watch it, I see something new in there, and it's just weird and disturbing. It's also hilarious. So
that is pretty funny. I just looked at it.
Nice.
Well, Ethan, it's been a tremendous episode. There's so much great advice here for folks who are just starting out as designers, or folks that are already thinking about, hey, how do I improve someone's user interface and start thinking about sort of these global issues. So I can't thank you enough for joining the show and sharing that advice.
Matt, it was a real honor, man. Thanks for having me.
Where can folks find you on the web to say thanks?
My domain is ethanmarcotte.com or Unstoppable Robot Ninja if you want to read my blog. And I'm on Twitter as Beep or RWD if you're interested just in responsive design.
Awesome. Everybody check them out. Say thanks. And mattreport.com/subscribe. Join the mailing list. And we'll see you next time.